This week, Marlon Brando's son is out of jail after serving time for killing his sister's lover. An inside look at this star-crossed family on a Current Affair Extra right now. It's a Hollywood drama, only the stage is real life. Marlon Brando's son convicted of killing another man.
The messenger of misery has come to my house.
But now a new twist to this tragic saga. Christian Brando walks free. They are teen bandits swarming through department stores and taking expensive merchandise.
We're not talking about a couple of shirts. We're talking about carloads, van loads.
The Material Girl's most dangerous fan learns his fate. Hello and welcome to a Current Affair Extra. I'm Penny Daniels. But first, the latest on Marlon Brando and his tragedy-ridden family. Once again, this very private actor is making headlines because of his kids. This week, Christian Brando was released from jail, where he spent 5 years for killing his sister's lover. Shepard Smith has details. Shepard.
Penny, Christian Brando, the son of legendary actor Marlon Brando, has now been released from prison. For many, this is the final chapter in an emotional saga which cost two people their lives and another his freedom. It almost brought down the house of Brando. For the past 5 years, the son of one of America's greatest actors has been locked up behind these fences. 37-year-old Christian Brando, who could never quite measure up to his famous father, is today a free man.
The real irony is that even in jail, Christian could not escape the shadow, if you will, of his father.
Peter Manso is Marlon Brando's biographer. He says even though Christian is being released early for good behavior, the eldest son of the Hollywood icon hasn't had it that easy behind bars, despite the fact that his father did try to help.
Christian was receiving all sorts of goodies from Marlon, i.e. lots of cigarettes, delicacies to eat. There's always conflict between gangs in prisons. Christian got himself in somewhat of a jam because he was giving to both black fellow prisoners and Aryan Brotherhood prisoners. And this, from my understanding, things got dicey in there for a while.
But Christian would eventually find allies in the prison's biker population, again because of his movie star father.
It was Marlon Brando, Christian's father, who did The Wild One, who was the legendary motorcyclist and ultimately gave these guys, many of whom were ex-Hells Angels, you know, their identity.
Marlon Brando had it all until that fateful night almost 6 years ago when his entire world came crashing down.
The messenger of misery has come to my house.
XO44.
Los Angeles police were summoned to the Hilltop estate that Brando shared with his children. A shooting had been reported.
About 10:45 in the evening, a rather warm evening, a 911 call was received.
That phone call was made by the shaken actor himself.
A request was made for paramedics, and so paramedics responded along with uniformed officers. They were advised that Dag Drollet, a visitor at the Marlon Brando estate, had been shot.
During what police called a heated argument, Christian Brando had fired a single shot, one that killed Dag Drollet. The handsome 26-year-old was the live-in lover of Cheyenne Brando, Christian's half-sister. She was 8 months pregnant with Drollet's child. That night, Christian was arrested on murder charges and held on $10 million bond.
Christian has always maintained and will continue to maintain that this was an accident.
High-powered and now all-too-familiar defense attorney Robert Shapiro was immediately hired by Brando to defend his son. Shapiro took Christian's case to the public, claiming Drollet had beaten the frail Cheyenne.
Christian confronted him with those allegations and told him that they must stop, that he could not beat any woman, and especially a pregnant woman who was his little sister.
Drollet was buried in his native Tahiti. His father, Jacques Drollet, a well-known local politician, pleaded for justice in his son's death.
If Christian Brando is the murderer of my son, I would want him to be seated and executed on an electrical chair.
The arrest of the Hollywood legend's son stunned the world. The normally reclusive Marlon Brando finally broke his silence and publicly took responsibility for his family's tragedy. He even put his mansion up for collateral to have Christian released on bond.
He has the added burden of being in the position of being punished because he simply happens to be my son.
Marlon, by his own admission, has been a very bad parent.
Peter Manso literally wrote the book on Marlon Brando. Brando, a biography, has just hit the stands in paperback.
This was basically an accident waiting to happen. The pattern was in the carpet from the get-go. His relations with his kids have been sporadic at best. Marlon, with Christian, was alternately terribly affectionate and giving, and then the next day he would turn into Adolf Hitler. And Cheyenne spoke of his inattention in the most saddening, depressing way.
Cheyenne was considered the only material witness in the shooting. She was quickly shuttled off to her birthplace of Tahiti so she could avoid testifying. 6 weeks after Drollet's death, she gave birth to his son, Tukey. The baby was born addicted to drugs, and a few months later, back in L.A., his uncle Christian cut himself a deal with the prosecutor.
How do you plead?
Guilty.
Marlon Brando was not in court when his son copped a plea, and Christian was sentenced to 10 years in state prison. Meanwhile, Cheyenne was shuttled from one psychiatric hospital to the next. In this rare interview, the troubled young woman blamed the family's misery on her famous father.
I don't have a normal life. I think my father has a strong, he has a strong power over me. And it doesn't scare me, but I can't live with it, that's for sure.
Cheyenne fell into a deep depression. She lost custody of her son. Her lover was dead, and her brother was in jail for killing him. Cheyenne attempted suicide at least twice before actually hanging herself at her mother's home in Tahiti. This interview was the last time the tortured young woman ever spoke out.
I used to love my father very much. I don't love him anymore. He's the devil himself. I just want to mend Dad, that's all.
She blames her father for being a control freak. She would refer to him as the true life godfather, as the manipulator, as Svengali.
Marlon Brando was reportedly devastated when his 25-year-old daughter took her own life, but he did not attend Cheyenne's funeral. She was buried in her beloved Tahiti beside her fallen lover.
The entire island had turned out. I mean, there were literally thousands and thousands of people. But one person central to this whole drama was missing. The people of Tahiti were appalled.
Today, many Tahitians believe that Christian Brando is now truly paying for the sins of his father.
When the killing took place, the island divided right down the middle. There were those who were on Marlon's side, those who were on Drollet's side. Now, I'm afraid there are very few people on Marlon's side.
Now, a current affair has learned Christian Brando was spotted at his father's home on Wednesday just after his release, spotted at the same house where the gunshot rang out, beginning a horrible saga which tarnished the Brando name forever. That's the latest from Hollywood. Penny, back to you.
It took the jury just 4.5 hours to find Robert Dewey Hoskins guilty of stalking and threatening to kill the material girl. Madonna's attorney spoke to her minutes after the verdict.
She asked me to release the following statement. Quote, I am very relieved that the defendant has been convicted in this case and justice has been served.
Penny Parker, a homemaker, was one of 4 female jurors who felt Madonna's fear.
Oh, I would be scared to death. Sure I would.
Hoskins will be sentenced next month. He could get 11 years. Meanwhile, Madonna sees this as a huge coup for all stalking victims. With Hoskins in jail, Madonna is no longer running in fear of her life.
Welcome back to A Current Affair Extra. I'm Penny Daniels. There's a new plague out there, and it's spreading, but it's not a sickness. It's a crime wave. Young crooks looting from merchants at will. Louis Aguirre has the story.
The song is Gangsta's Paradise, and that's just what Miami has become to these hoodlums. This is no movie, this is real. You're looking at hidden camera surveillance video of the latest crime wave to hit the nation, especially South Florida. It's known as the smash and grab. An army of young outlaws smashes its way into a closed retail store. Then the looting rampage begins. The robbers work fast, clearing racks of merchandise in a matter of minutes before speeding off to a clean getaway. Store owners are left coping with thousands of dollars in damages and lost goods.
We're not talking about a couple of shirts. We're talking about carloads, van loads.
Talking about 10 minutes or less. And they usually end up hitting the stores for $50,000 to $250,000.
Metro-Dade Police Sgt. John Roper is on the front line in the war against the smash and grabbers. The first attack happened at a department store 3 years ago. Since then, it's happened again and again and again. 600 similar incidents across the state of Florida.
We've had weeks go by where they've hit 2, 3, 4 times.
South Florida cops say the smash and grab crime wave has gotten so bad that it's almost become an everyday occurrence here. As a matter of fact, on the very same day we started shooting our story, this North Miami sports store was hit early that same morning. Police say that's when 8 robbers armed with a sledgehammer smashed their way inside through one of the store's front windows that you now see boarded up. As it turns out, the sledgehammer wasn't the only thing they were armed with.
Police say the suspects were wielding semi-automatic guns and surprised a group of early morning employees who were preparing the store for opening.
It's definitely getting worse, and it's getting more violent. Now they're threatening lives. It's no longer just a rock in a window.
In fact, sometimes smash and grabbers even drive stolen cars straight into stores. Special Agent Addy Mesa has seen it all. In the past 2 months, she's helped coordinate 2 police raids that have nabbed a total of 15 accused smash and grabbers. But the numbers go way beyond that.
We have over 250 suspects. This is a list of everybody that we've identified as smash and grab individuals.
It just goes on and on.
On and on.
Mesa says many of them are juveniles, as young as 12 years old. What's worse, according to police, is that many of the adults use aliases posing as juveniles, making it very easy to slip through the cracks of Florida's juvenile justice system.
A lot of them are adults, and when they are arrested, they have absolutely no identification on them. They claim to be juveniles. They're arrested in the juvenile system. They're released to parent, legal guardian, anyone over the age of 18, and they're out. And then who's going to find them?
So you're arresting these people, putting them behind bars, but the system lets them out, free to commit this type of crime all over again.
Correct. I see the same names over and over and over.
That's why the war against the smash and grabbers has raged on for 3 years. Retailers are livid.
Major frustration. There's no other way to put it. Madder than hell.
Peggy Hurst chairs the Florida Retail Association. She lobbied the Florida governor, prompting the creation of the state's first juvenile justice department. And she continues to fight for new, tougher laws.
There's thumbing their nose at the community, and they're thumbing their nose at the judicial system. But that's going to change.
Till then, law enforcement will continue to put the bite on the smash and grabbers as their attacks become increasingly more and more dangerous.
Violence is definitely increasing, and the way we see it going is somebody's going to get killed.
The smash and grabs usually involve a double crime because the crooks almost always steal the cars they use, too. Still ahead on a current affair extra, the sound of the men working on the chain gang. We'll tell you why some states think it's music to taxpayers' ears.
Work them hard, or eliminate them.
They were outlawed at the turn of the century, but now they're back. Chain gangs, shackling inmates together and putting them to work outside prison. Florida has just become the 3rd state to reinstitute this old-fashioned punishment. Will they help fight crime, or are they just barbaric? Leslie Roberts went down to Alabama to find out.
Don't you know that's the sound of the man working on a chain? Yeah.
I think they need to earn their keep, you know, instead of just laying up watching cable television all the time. A lot of the criminals that are in prisons have it too easy.
Work them hard, or eliminate them.
All day long, we work so hard.
Deep in the heart of Dixie in Alabama, voters have sent their elected officials a very clear message. Bring back hard labor. Bring back rock busting. Alabama and Arizona have gone one step further than the few other states that have reintroduced chain gangs. Their inmates are busting rocks.
We'll use those stones to line driveways, roadways, repair roads, farm roads. So it's meaningful.
In Alabama, the fight for human rights took a back seat when politicians faced pressure to lower the cost of prisons.
How long have you been on the chain gang now? 65 days. Well, you got about 25 more to go. You'll be in good shape.
The Get Tough policy came from this man, Alabama's prison commissioner, Ron Jones.
Critics say that what's going on out there is inhumane, that these prisoners are being treated very badly.
Right, but it's not against the law.
Not everyone on the chain gang has been convicted of a violent crime. It's strictly for repeat offenders. The prisoners are chained in groups of 5 and spend up to 10 hours a day on the chain gangs, often under grueling conditions. The Alabama temperatures are known to reach 100 degrees. They tell me that they're in constant pain, that the leg irons chafe their ankles, and there's never any question of being able to take them off, not even to use the toilet.
It's treating people like slaves.
The hard labor crackdown has outraged David Levin of the Prisoners' Legal Services.
It's going to cause inmates to be hostile and angry because they're engaged in work which is not constructive whatsoever.
Commissioner Jones says he's heard it all before, and he's convinced fear of ending up on a chain gang is a huge deterrent.
If you come back to our prison system more than once, then you automatically go to the chain gang if you're medically fit, automatically.
You've been on the chain gang how long now?
Approximately 67 days.
How's it going?
It's tough.
Yeah?
Inmate Stanley Lee was sentenced to prison for not paying a hotel bill, but then ended up on the chain gang for violating parole.
There's some guys here that all they need is to be able to told they're worth something.
Alabama's prison commissioner won't back down.
The rock busting is here to stay?
It will get progressively tougher as we go on.
Here in Limestone, Alabama, we work hard for you.
4 Alabama inmates have filed suit charging that chain gangs are unconstitutional.